Welcome back. Man, I just had an incredible conversation and drive with an inspiring and one badass mofo. This dude has done it all. In the past 2 decades, he's won 12 Olympic medals, 5 gold medals. He's been inducted into the U.S. Ski and Snowboard Hall of Fame. He climbed Mount Kilimanjaro on a handbike. He started a nonprofit. He's an entrepreneur. He's an author. He's a motivational speaker. He's done all this in the past 25 years. Right after he broke his back and became paralyzed from the waist down. He's a true inspiration in letting us know that the limitations we set for ourselves are all in our mind. I hope you enjoy this episode as I take a drive with Mr. Chris Waddell. My apologies to some of the audio. There's a 5-minute section where some rain came down, and hopefully it didn't get picked up too much. Welcome to episode 3 of Beyond Great with me, David James.
Okay.
All right.
And you just got live on this, right?
We're live, baby.
All right.
Chris,
Very
how you
exciting.
been?
I have been well. This is great. Very exciting. Nice to connect again, too.
Likewise. You
Yeah.
got the summer dew going.
The summer dew. Yeah.
I like it.
Little,
The casualness.
Little flow. Yeah. I might have to get it cut.
Summertime in Park City.
I know. Well, it might get hot, too.
Yeah,
right?
you might need to cut it for the summer unless you're just going for the freestyle.
I know. We'll see.
How long have you lived in Park City?
It'll be 19 years in October.
Where
Yeah.
from?
I grew up in Massachusetts, west of Boston, hour and a half west of Boston.
Okay.
And then I was splitting time while I was on the ski team between Vail and Boston, or Vail and Massachusetts. And then I moved out here in '99 before the Olympics to be part of Olympics and Paralympics, to be part of the whole buildup.
So were you training elsewhere?
I was training in Vail. So one
Okay.
of my coaches, probably my favorite coach, was based in Vail, and so that's why I was there. But then it just seemed like I finally made enough money that I didn't have to move every 6 months, which is helpful. And so I moved out here, bought a place, and it's been 19 years. I thought it'd be 3 years. Thought it'd be
Yeah,
3
right.
games, It's like
It kind of sucks us all in.
it does.
Or,
So convenient.
Or people
So
leave
nice.
and then they realize what they left and they got to come back to it.
Yeah, and then they can't afford to.
Yeah, then they miss their real estate bubble.
Yep.
You're an inspiring dude. It's pretty cool to as I was reading your bios and stuff, I was like, man, I gotta get my shit together. You've
That's
done
what I
some,
think every day.
Yeah. You've done some.
Not about you. About me.
Yeah. Do you feel that you give people hope? I mean, do you feel that your mission is kind of developed to where you really are inspiring people?
I've gone through, and it's funny because trying to figure out what your purpose is can be a really challenging thing. It seems like something that we think we should know. And I've spent literally the last year and a half kind of working through and doing a lot of journaling, reading a bunch of books, things like that. And what I came down to is that mission for me is to try to turn impossible into reality. And to help people, perform better and to live more complete and full lives. And I think to a certain extent we learn from each other, don't we? I mean, we learn from what we see. Sometimes we think, oh, I can't do that, and then we see somebody else do something similar, and we think, oh man, I'm selling myself short.
For sure.
I really need to do that.
Yeah.
So I think I expect the best out of myself, and that does create a bit of a dilemma sometimes as you're going through trying to think, how can I get in? How can I make this happen? I mean, I'm working on a new project, and last night I thought, I don't know if I want to do this, and
Yeah, the launch part's the scariest part.
it really is. And telling other people about it, and you think, they're going to think I'm an idiot, which, is true to a certain extent,
I think we all are.
I think that we've got to keep that part, because the more seriously we take ourselves, the less likely we are to kind of venture and try something that might really scare us. And so hopefully those things are a little bit less, they take a little bit less time, that I have this moment of, oh, I'm going to give up. And then this morning I'm like, all right, now I need to go. And I just came from a great meeting, and I thought, okay, now it's time to move forward. And I think part of that is just having I think as much as anything, what I bring is not a fearlessness, but a willingness to be fearful and and try to make the thing that I'm fearful about.
You've been through some intense stuff, and what's I like hearing you say is that, you know, you have this fearfulness, and it doesn't matter what aspect or what you've achieved in life, you still have your self-doubts, and you still got to kind of push through, you know, the things that you're concerned about with your own well-being or the message you're trying to send out, no matter what you've accomplished. And so we're all human. We're all the same person.
I really think so. I mean, we're never going to be free of self-doubt. It's going to happen no matter what. And each time we go into something that's important, there's going to be more self-doubt because there's something riding on it. But the other part of that is, well, then we care about it.
For sure.
And if we care about it, then it matters to us, and then it helps us to grow as a person. And growing and learning, obviously, is not always comfortable.
Yeah.
So, but recognizing, I guess, that it's important is part of the battle, and saying, I don't want to stop. I want to keep going.
So what kind of books are you reading? What kind of journaling are you doing to go deep into this mindset?
You know, one of the great things that I read last year was, can I get the title right? Well, I haven't thought about it in a little bit. What was it called? What was that called? Was it Enlightened Optimism or something like that? It was something about optimism. I can't think about. I can't. But it was. Wow. It was essentially. It was sort of the next step of the Freudian view of the world, or next step of existentialism, and in that we have the ability to react to determine how we want to react to what's going on,
mm-hmm.
and that being optimistic can be a really important part of how we see our lives. That we're going to have defeats, but can we maintain a sense of optimism? That's not just blind optimism. I think it's a sense of we have an ability to affect what's going on, even if we've had these defeats, that we can affect what's going on moving forward. So that was one of my favorites. Wow.
Do you read like a lot of self-help, spiritual type books? Or?
I have read a fair number of self-help and spiritual books. I've read a bunch of other things. You know, it's funny doing what I do. I mean, I make my living essentially as a motivational type speaker. And I just finished a book that was called Can't Help Myself, which was written by the woman. So in the Boston Globe, there's a woman who writes a column called Love Letters. And so people are writing into her. Basically, she's like a modern day Ann Landers kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
And they're writing in, and she's answering questions, but then she had this breakup, and, you know, was ending up, you know, just like in tears in between the vending machines kind of thing. It was a complete mess, and like, I'm giving out advice, but yet I can't figure out how to get my own life together. And to me, it was kind of interesting, just because we all do have that self-doubt. We do have answers, but it's nice to hear somebody who has a lot of great things to say, but at the same time has her own problems. But if you don't have any problems, in a lot of ways, you don't have much to offer.
Right? Yeah. I mean, you can't. Yeah. If you're born rich and you just play golf every day, what are you going to offer the world?
Exactly. It's like, hey, life is perfect.
Yeah. Exactly. And you have no experiences to kind of fall back on.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I climbed the mountain, when I climbed Kilimanjaro, people often ask me, how did you prepare for it? And I said, everything that went wrong in my life. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, those are the things that gave me the confidence that when something went wrong on the mountain, when something was going to go wrong on the mountain, I'd have the ability to at least deal with it and look at it in a logical kind of way.
Now, when you were in that mindset of climbing Kilimanjaro, I mean, obviously you had moments. I mean, how many days did it take you to climb it, first of all?
It took 6.5 days to get up, and it took a day and a half to get down, but it took 2 years to get there, and the 2 years were far more difficult than
the 2 years of physical preparation or like logistics?
Physical, mental, emotional, financial, pretty much.
That guy's ready to go.
Yeah, I guess he is. All right. Which this is definitely one of those streets that you should go as fast as you can.
Yeah, exactly. There's no kids here.
I love this. This is one of those, like, I get this on my bike all the time too, where the guy goes and speeds up to pass me and then turns right in front of me, so then I have to slow down.
Yeah, I know. I'm glad you saved that quarter second of your life.
Yeah, exactly. And thanks for the help.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, so what was the toughest? I would assume the mental preparation was the toughest, just self-doubt, wondering if you can do it. And were you just out on the road, in the gym, just cranking every day to get ready for this?
So the physical part was tough because I was a ski racer and I raced wheelchairs, but I raced up through 800 meters really internationally. So that's less than 2 minutes. So it's a tactical sprint is the 800 meters. And I had to go from 2 minutes to an average of 9 to 10 hours a day. We did a lot of callousing effectively. So what you would do is you go out for 6 or 8 hours or something like that, come back completely, thoroughly exhausted, barely able to get into bed, and then go out and do it again the next day and start building that base.
Yeah, you're just pushing your body to a level of exhaustion.
Yeah, and where you can stop whenever you want. You just have to figure out a way to get started again.
Oh man.
So that was a part of it on the physical side, but then on the the financial side, I'd never raised that kind of money to.
Was it all through private donors?
We did private donors. We had one group that was a sponsor. We had some grants, so we had a little bit of a smorgasbord of ways that we did, and some of it was 2008 and 2009. So some of the scary part is that we just didn't have some of the funding, and so a lot of the funding became personal funding where I cashed out, all the stocks that I owned. I tapped out my bank account. I put a lot of money on my personal credit cards and these kinds of things. So sometimes it's that romantic view, which I don't know that I would do the romantic view of it again, because it just,
was it worth it?
I think in the end it was worth it, but it was really scary. I don't think I took a deep breath. I don't think I exhaled for like 2 years, really. Just that constant stress, the stress that you don't think you're stressed. You think, oh, well, I'm relaxed. And it's like, no. And you look back on it, no, I was not. I was just vibrating at such a stress frequency for so long that it taxed me personally, just health-wise and stuff like that. Nothing super serious, but I was exhausted the whole time. So there was the financial, there was the mental side of and that was the physical training helped with the mental training as well. So Dave, who was my guide 2 times to me, one time we were climbing Mount Evans in Colorado, and we wanted to see how I'd do at altitude. So he put a strap on his mountain bike so we could do the first 9 miles, which were lower altitude, so I could trail behind him and he could help me get up, and we could go a little bit faster to check out how I'd survive on the last 5 miles. And so I'm on my own. I'm going as fast as I can on the bottom 9 miles, trying to maintain slack in that length of webbing. And so I'd gone faster than I'd ever gone. But then we got to the top 5, and I'm going through, and I am cooked. And there are all these switchbacks, and I keep thinking that's got to be the top. And then I keep just getting my hopes and dreams just dashed each time, where it's like, it's not, it's a switchback, it's a false
front,
summit.
yeah.
Like, oh, this is it, to the point where I felt like I wanted to just throw a tantrum, just be a little kid, just kicking and screaming on the ground. But I knew Dave, he was sort of the Zen kind of guy. He'd just be like, just wait me out, and then be like, all right, you want to keep going to the top? Like, yeah, all right. So I avoided the tantrum part, but kept going. And when I got there, then you think, wow, I so wanted to quit.
Yeah,
along
totally.
the way, but I made it. So the mental side there. Another time we did like a 3 to 4 hour ride in Moab on the White Rim Trail, over a couple of big climbs and through the sand pit and all this stuff and everything. And I'm coming through, and I was thinking I was pretty cool. I was like, this is awesome. Like, this is really working out. Some other guys had done it in a hand cycle, and it took them like 2 days to do what I had just done in 4 hours. And I thought, okay,
yeah, I'm ready.
We're progressing. This is it. And so we're pedaling, and I'm just going along, and I get to Dave's white van, and he hops in and goes, "I'll see you 5 miles down the road." I was like, oh.
Mentally crushed.
I was like, oh.
So money aside, would you do it again?
I don't feel like the mountain owes me. I think that one of the great things about the mountain is that it's a metaphor for all of our struggles, right?
Mm-hmm. Totally.
We're all in this situation where we're climbing a mountain of some sort, and so it's a reminder to me that that's what I want to do. that I want to do something
Keep climbing.
that keeps me climbing, and that involves other people. And I mentioned to you, I think in an email or whatever, that some of what I'm doing now, it's kind of funny. I've decided that I'm going to write my memoir, but I want to publish it serially to my blog. So
Yeah.
going back to like the Dickens days kind of thing, I guess I'd be my own periodical at that point, but publishing a chapter at a time every other week, but also doing a video podcast with some of the people who are really important to me in the story, and rounding out the story a little bit more. I mean, just getting some great stuff. I talked to one of the guys this morning. I'm going to interview him in Denver next week, 10 days, something like that, and just hearing his perspective. He's a guy, I went back to college, and skin breakdown was such a big worry, being in a wheelchair. They're worried about this. So my parents bought me a waterbed, but the frame was kind of miserable. And this guy built a frame for me. Like, I was exhausted, 8 o'clock at night. I'm like, I need to go to bed, and it wasn't going together. And he built this frame, and everything was perfect. Once he came in, he saved the day. But just learning how much he was influenced by one of the guys who was a dean, who was the guy who actually made this almost 200-year-old school, built mostly out of granite on the top of a hill in northern Vermont, accessible. And he's like, I want to be avuncular. I want to be like this guy. And I thought that's a really cool thing. So what I've seen just in this project, one, it scares me, but two, I've kind of thrown it out there, and people, the responses I get are like, wow, this sounds amazing.
You're becoming really vulnerable. Like you said in your email, you're talking about your depression, bankruptcy, your marriage, the ups, the downs, and that's a very vulnerable state to admit to people that, someone like you as a motivational speaker, how you make your living, you were depressed. You almost were bankrupt, and those are real life challenges that a lot of people don't even face.
That they don't face, and I think when I'm looking at, for me, in some ways, one of the main goals is to get people to look beyond the wheelchair to see me as an individual. But the only way to achieve that is to be as honest as possible. And the more honest we are, the more universal the message is, the more other people can drop their life experiences into our story and become the protagonist in our story.
Over the last 25 years, do you feel that it is hard for people to look past the wheelchair? I mean, I remember you saying, the little girl saying, that's too bad, and do you find that, especially with little kids, that people do have a tough time looking past the wheelchair? They don't see the individual.
I think that there are things that it still persists. I think there are things that are just below the surface, and that sometimes, and I'm trying to think if I can come up with an actual story. Even this was a little while ago, but after I had done the climb, I went to, I was here, and I ended up, I broke my leg going down my basement stairs, and I went to the hospital here, and I'm checking into the hospital, doing all my vitals and stuff like that, and the nurse is doing all this stuff, and she looked at my oxygenation, like the amount of oxygen in my blood, and she's like, wow, you're like 99% at like, at 6,500 feet, and I was like, well, I just went to 90,000 feet, so maybe that works out okay. But she ended it with, are you on any prescription drugs? And I said, no. And she said, really? Nothing for depression? And I was like, wow, that just, it seems like a question that you couldn't ask somebody else, a representative of any other group, whether gender, race,
you're
age.
less happy than an able person.
Right, exactly. And so it was a really interesting kind of thing. That
Very
sometimes
interesting. What a stereotype.
How that just, and there was no malintent.
Yeah, it was
whatsoever.
It was a legitimate question on her part.
It was just below the surface, and I think that's part of it, is that you want to be seen as an individual, and not necessarily for the perceived limitations. And I think that, having been somebody in the public eye, there's a bit of a responsibility on me to go ahead and give people a story that can replace the story that they've been telling themselves, that might then affect the way that they see the next person, that they don't see them necessarily for the limitations or for that too bad, like that little girl said, or instead for like, well, what do you do?
Yeah, everyone has a story, and it's just getting past that story and judging a book by its cover is a very typical human response. And yeah, just to get past that and learn someone's story. I mean, we all are guilty of it, and so yeah, I like that message that you yeah, you said in one of your interviews I was reading that you don't know if you could have done this without the accident. You couldn't have been the best in the world at and I understand the skiing part, like maybe your athletic skill wasn't as quality, but do you really believe that you couldn't have done the things that you've done without your accident?
It's one of those hypotheticals, right? I mean, it's a really hard question to answer in a lot of ways, just because we project like, oh, well, if I hadn't had my accident, this is what I would have done. I would have done X, Y, Z, and our lives take so many twists and turns. We don't know which way things will go or any of these things. And sometimes, the Dalai Lama said, sometimes not getting what you want can be the greatest gift of all. And you think, okay, but I don't know that I would have been,
as motivated or
athletically. I don't know that I wouldn't have done it. I don't think athletically by any means, but I don't know that I would have been sort of in the, sometimes I might have been a little bit more mainstream, where I might have been, it's easy to sort of be average or a little bit above average or something like that within whatever, and where I was forced into a more alternative kind of path that afforded me the opportunity to say, well, I'm gonna shoot for the moon and see what I can do here and see if I can make this thing work. And I think that's
Have you always had this kind of mental determination, this grit inside of you, or is this something that's come after?
It's funny because I feel like it's come more afterwards. My mother has said, no, this has always been part of who you are, and obviously she she knows some things.
Yeah, all moms do.
All moms do. So it's kind of a funny little situation to try to figure out what we recognize, but it's also just sometimes it's being afforded the opportunity to do it, to not just make practical decisions or the logical decision. And
for sure,
you do this, and I think that's one of the biggest problems for a lot of us is that it's really easy just to go and make decisions and make the right decision and do the right thing and neglect in a lot of ways who we are. It's easy to be unfulfilled, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, being average is easy, and we're all, guilty of being average in some way, but that's why there's only a select few of people that go out and achieve what they want, whether it's financially, spiritually, emotionally, physically. It's really too bad how we settle for less than what we're capable of or what we truly, brings us happiness and joy.
It is. I have Teddy Roosevelt's quote, about the man in the arena in my office. Do you want me to do the whole thing? I can do. It's a fairly long quote, but you know what? I'll do it for you. Here you go. So it's not the man. It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or how the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes up short again and again, for there is no effort without error or shortcoming, but who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself for a worthy cause, who in the end at best knows the triumph of high achievement, and who at worst, if he fails while daring greatly, so that his place will never be among those cold and timid souls who knew neither victory nor defeat. And I have it there because I want to remember.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Like that's part of it. If you aim for the middle, you're not gonna fail spectacularly, but you might not ever achieve, in a way that's really personal as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You have this very refreshing, contagious energy about you that's very peaceful. Have you always had this? Is this always something you've been, or have you practiced this? Is something that's come along the way?
Wow. I am not sure. I mean, I'll try to answer that. I guess you'd probably have to ask other people to a certain extent, but I think in some ways it comes from trying to be comfortable with myself, because I think that there are definitely times where, if you're trying to risk everything.
This is my friend's dogs.
Oh, really? That's funny.
Yeah, the road. I don't see him.
I know, that's the problem. You don't want that little speed bump.
You see him over there?
I don't see him over here. No.
Well,
I think they're okay.
for those of you listening, there's 2 dogs on the road. There they are. All right.
Okay, we're all good. But I think the peaceful part, I think one of the things, one of the most difficult things in some ways that I'm trying to deal with is that I know that I'm a people pleaser.
Mm-hmm.
Like I sent myself an email last night just that I'm like, you know what? I always want people to like me, and I'm kind of tired of it. Because it puts me in a position where
it's exhausting.
Where it's exhausting, and I'm not entirely myself all the time. Where sometimes you're being that chameleon and trying to fit in.
So why do you feel like you want people to like you? I mean, is that an ego thing? Like a
self-preservation, I think, is a big part of it. I think there is obviously an ego part of it, but I think it's a self-preservation thing of like, okay, I want people to like me, and then, doing what I do as a speaker, it's one of those, like, you want to get hired. You want these people to love you. Like, okay, love me, hire me.
For sure,
keep me working.
But the people that don't love you, I mean, that's not your audience, and that's the tough part to understand, I think, for any speaker. I mean, even this podcast, like, there's going to be thousands and thousands of people that think this thing sucks.
Yeah.
And that's not my audience, and that's okay, and there may be 20 people that like this, but, you're exploring your creative side, you're sending out your message, you're being true to your story, and those that want to resonate with it are the ones that, you're really speaking to.
It's true, and it's you do have to go through a lot of struggles in order to find your own voice, and in order to be true to your own voice too. I'm reading about Van Gogh right now, and just sort of, he's one of those guys, like, we look at him now and go, Van Gogh, like, he's amazing, but he was told that he was so bad and that he would never ever do this, and he never really made it in the world. He was a failure in the eyes of his parents. His father was a preacher, and he was supposed to go into preaching. He had this personality where he definitely rubbed people the wrong way, and couldn't make it in school, couldn't make it, but he stuck with, he had this vision of what his art was supposed to be, and kept sticking with it even when these established artists told him, no, you shouldn't do that, and it won't work. And you think, okay,
those are the greats, the people that take the path that everyone said you shouldn't take. Those are, in any realm of the world, those are the greats.
It is.
The ones we talk about.
And the ones who are willing to take that next step when everybody else will quit. And sometimes you think, well, that's completely crazy. Why would you want to do that? And but yeah, I think in some ways that's one of my personal goals, is to be as comfortable with myself. And I think it starts with a level of honesty, both publicly and personally. That sense of honesty of saying, okay, yeah, this is who I am, and this is what I want to do, and I don't have to fit in, and I don't have to conform to everything I thought. Like, this is what I was supposed to do as a kid, and I'm not doing that. So I'm not doing the right thing. Eventually, I should get back in.
For sure. And when you're standing on that stage, in front of that audience, I mean, you definitely have to convey that honesty, or they're going to see right through you, and then your message is just what you think they want to hear rather than what you want to tell.
Yeah, and it can be really saccharine at that point, just the message, and it's sort of hollow calories of what people want to feel, and you really want to get somebody to think and to look and to take some steps to really improve who they are, and to want to improve who they are. Because I think if we're not trying to improve who we are, we're doing ourselves and the world in a lot of ways a disservice.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Have you met the Dalai Lama?
I have met the Dalai Lama. I received an award.
Yeah. So what is the unsung hero of compassion
the unsung
award?
The unsung hero of compassion award. I actually ended up connecting to it via the National Ability Center because they do this fundraiser called the Red, White, and Snow with cult vintners from Napa every year. And this guy Dick and Ann Grace, I skied with them at the event, and Dick had done a bunch of work, or they both had done a bunch of work with women in Tibet, their philanthropic work, as a result of their wine proceeds. And I skied with him, and he said, we want to give you this award. And I thought, okay, well, that sounds, one, really cool, and two, why? Like, I've won a couple of races, but that's pretty much all I've done here. And it was really funny. And he said, no, we want to do it. And so what they do is they give the award to 50 people. I think it's every 5 years that they do it. And so I'm sitting there, and there are these people who, who were born in a hut, a dirt floored hut, and now speak 12 languages. There was some woman who was trying to eradicate female circumcision. There were all these sorts of things. Doctors who were just serving people with horrible burns, in like slums and in Africa and things like that, people who would never have any service, and you think, wow, like, this is absolutely amazing. Why am I here? And I went across the stage and kind of put my hands together, and the Dalai Lama put the kathaka around my neck and sort of blessed me, and you're in that aura with him at that moment.
Yeah, I've heard about it.
This is a pretty cool place to be. I'd like to be here for a lot longer. And then I moved on, and I shook Dick's hand, and he said, you realize you're just starting on this journey? I said, oh yeah, I'm acutely aware of that. I'm just starting it. And the funny part was, 5 years later, he asked me to come back, and the night before the awards, he asked me to speak to all of the recipients.
Mm-hmm.
And I recounted that story of going across the stage and saying, you're not worthy of this. And I was like, yeah, I totally know. I am just starting on this journey. And I shared it with these people, and like 5 people came up to me afterwards. This one woman said, I was ready to leave before you spoke because I didn't feel like I was worthy of this. And I said, nobody does. It's an award that in some ways you get before you've really earned it. And
so are you a spiritual person?
I am spiritual. I'm not religious necessarily. I meditate every day. And I like to think of myself as a spiritual person, but it's in my own sort of way.
I'm the exact same. I'm not religious, and I grew up, my mom's a very spiritual person, but yeah, I have my own set of my own, I don't know, self discovered ideas on the philosophies of spirituality and just life, and the but Buddhism isn't a religion.
Right.
Necessarily. It's just kind of a way of thinking and a way of
way of life.
Mindset of it. So man, the Dalai Lama, that'd be really cool.
It is really cool. He actually came to my college as well, which was one of the funnier things. He came to the college, and he was there in the dining hall at one point, and it sort of felt kind of Bill Murray in some ways, but from Caddyshack, and you're going through the dining hall, and you look over and you see the Dalai Lama, and obviously he's so distinctive looking, and he's got his robes on, and he's getting orange juice, and you go, the Dalai Lama drinks orange juice. Huh. All right.
So, yeah, the little simplicity things.
Yeah.
In an interview I read, you said you kind of had 2 major transitions in your life, and that might have changed since I've seen this interview. Maybe you're on your 3rd transition, but 1, when you broke your back, and 2, when you retired. And I understand, like, when you broke your back, like I actually kind of, in a weird way, I understood like what you were saying, how you were kind of motivated, and it was in a sense like you didn't necessarily get down, did you? You didn't really go into a dark place?
I didn't go into a dark place because I was scared of the dark place, really. I felt like if I went into a dark place that I might stay there.
Yeah, and I feel like in that situation, without knowing, you've kind of hit a fork in the road, and you can say, I can go down this dark path and really be upset and just kind of down on my luck, or I can get my shit together and really pursue a different path with excellence. And I don't see really a middle ground on that, and you chose that way, and I feel like it's a chance kind of to start over in a different realm. And so I kind of understood where you're coming from in that, like you're motivated to pursue this new path that your life has gone down. But the retirement part, I understood as well, like the depression, like you like you said, you felt like you weren't important anymore, or a lack of self-worth,
and a lack of motivation, a lack of passion. In some ways, I felt like I've been jilted by my
you've
passion.
dedicated your whole mind to this craft and your body and everything, and now what? And I feel like that's a common thing with athletes. Like I know a lot of professional athletes that, yeah, they used to call a restaurant and then get a table for 10 the night of, or get into a club or whatever it was, and they retire, and all of a sudden that no one's picking up their phone calls anymore. You know, like they're no longer, it's not cool to have, you know, a retired guy in the restaurant anymore. And a lot of them go into a dark, like you read about it, the top athletes in the world, they go into this dark place. And so how do you, I mean, I know the Kilimanjaro thing got you your next motivating purpose, but how do you get out of that mindset?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and it's still interesting to me that other athletes go through it, and it's been really profound for a lot of people. And I think that one of the things with the athlete part too is that when you retire from that, it's also a connection to your youth. It's a connection to the most pure part of who you are. But then there's so many benefits that come with it where it's about what you're able to do. It's about being important. It's about people picking up the phone call. It's about the phone ringing for you to do things and putting your self-worth there too. But it's also, I think that so often we put this goal out there and say, if I achieve this, then everything will make sense. And there's this weird dichotomy that the value of what we do is based on the sacrifices that we had to make to get there. But then the realization oftentimes when we get there is that we've sacrificed a lot of the things that are actually important in our lives too. So like for me, when I retired, I felt like I sacrificed a career, I sacrificed my finances, I sacrificed relationships, all of these things to be single-minded. And sometimes as an athlete, you're really rewarded for being single-minded, for being able to compartmentalize and to say, this is the most important thing that I need to do right now. I need to focus on that, and I need to block everything else out because it won't help me perform.
For sure.
And then how do we move forward from that is a really big question. And I think the answer in a lot of ways for me is the answer that I give to people after an accident. People say, well, how can you recover from an accident? And my answer to them is always the same, is that find something you love. Find something that matters. Find a reason to get better. And if we can find a reason to get better in our lives, things are really working out.
Mm-hmm.
There's no such thing as status quo. Like if we're maintaining status quo, that's not true. We're either getting better or we're getting worse. And if we're trying to just maintain it, we're usually getting worse. We're usually, we're decaying. We're dying on some level. But it's a matter of shifting gears and trying to figure out, well, what is that next level, and what's the thing that I need to learn? Because it's not necessarily what we do. It's what it means to us when we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah. It's got to be a very interesting mindset to kind of be in that. I never thought about the age thing as well. Like it's kind of a realization that you are getting older and your body's no longer capable of performing at a level that it once could.
Yeah.
Man, I really hope this rain doesn't get picked up on these microphones.
I know, I'm with you on that.
There's a chance it might, but we'll find out.
Okay.
What else? So a good friend of mine, I was skiing with him this winter, and his son is autistic, and it sounds very close to Susan and Eric, but it's not.
Right.
And they had a good friend who was on the leading edge of autism research.
Okay.
And they were talking to them about some kind of pill and stuff that they were FDA approvals that they could cure autism. And when the guy left, he was so excited to let them know that their son could be cured or reverse the effects of it. And when he left, my friend turned to his wife and said, would you want to change him if this was able? And he goes, I really like him the way he is. And she started crying. She goes, me too. She goes, I don't want him to be different. And I was
like everybody else, really.
Yeah.
Right?
So in your TED talk I was listening to, and how you say that. Your friend said you'll be like you went to a seminar where they said they could maybe reverse the effects or help your symptom, and it was your buddy said to you, you don't want to do this because you'll be like everybody else.
Yeah.
And is it kind of the fact that you don't want to fall into the melting pot, and you feel like right now you have a voice and a platform to speak on, or you've just become so accustomed to the life that you've had for the last 25 years you couldn't imagine it any other way?
They're all really good questions, and I think that a part of it is that it's given me a platform, that it's made me unique in a good way. I hosted or I emceed the National Ability Center's event, the Red, White, and Snow event one year, and there was a little girl who was 6 years old who had spinal muscular atrophy. At 2 years old, her doctor told her parents that by the time she was 6, she wouldn't be able to get off the ground she wouldn't be able to stand up, she wouldn't be able to get off the floor, and she's been doing all this therapy and everything is hippotherapy on a horse, which is really cool, and they really attribute her success to that. And she was this amazing little girl, 6 years old, and she wouldn't talk. I went to her lesson, and she wouldn't talk to me at the lesson. And then that night, I had the microphone. She came up, and I said, "Sarah, do you want to say something?" And she took the microphone with both hands and never let go of it. And she said, "I want to thank the NAC, but I want to thank SMA, spinal muscular atrophy, because it's made me unique."
Oh, cool.
And it was really, it's sort of the who's who of town at that point in that room. And here's this little girl who in a lot of ways had more insight than anybody there.
Yeah, she kind of figured it out.
Yeah, at 6 years old, and it just blows you away. So one, I think it does make me unique. Two, I think that it's a life of, we're in a life of transition, right? That it is a matter of, okay, if there were a cure, a lot of parts of my life would be easier, but some of it would be different, and it's a matter of figuring out what that is. And
do you think you'd lose your message if you were cured, per se?
That's a really good question. Would I lose my message? It's maybe, but I don't think I would, just because I think that it would continue to be that life in transition, and that we end up learning a lot about ourselves as a result of the stress that we often choose to put into our lives. I mean, we can't avoid some of it, but oftentimes we're making decisions that are part of, like, okay, I'm going to choose a stressful direction. I'm going to choose the more difficult path here.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that do that. There's a lot of, athletes or people that start over on purpose once they've accomplished something, just to kind of find that next challenge. Has your life become a little boring in the sense of athletics now that you've achieved so much? I mean, when you go out and work out, are you, you're not grinding it like you used to?
I'm not. There's not necessarily the end competition kind of thing that you're looking for, but some of it's just looking at it differently too. I think that, so like for instance, on Sunday I went out and I hadn't been working out all that much during the winter, and I started riding again. And so I went from my second ride up from my house to the top of Royal Street. Mm-hmm. And just kind of looking at that, thinking, okay, if I do some hills, then I'm going to get stronger. And yeah, it's good, solid. It's 29 miles round trip, mostly uphill on the way out.
Yeah, it's very uphill.
And mostly downhill on the way back. So as I got up, I was about 1.5 miles from the finish, from the top, and it started to hail. And it went from being really pretty hot to hailing and being really cold. I mean, arm hairs sticking up, and thinking, am I going to go hypothermic here? Like, should I turn around? And I had that moment. I actually did sort of that little swerve and almost just turned around, and I thought, no, I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna keep going. Like, I'm committed here. I'm gonna keep going. And some of it is, I have a lot of reminders when I work out now. That reminder to me was back when I was in college, my goal in dryland was to push myself to the point where I wanted to quit, because then I had an opportunity to move beyond that point. And if I moved beyond the point where I wanted to quit, then I was exploring something new, and there were new possibilities.
Well, what's cool is you're one of the few humans that have tapped into that mindset of knowing that you have that switch of, not quitting. And so yeah, when you hit a moment like that, like, it means nothing to anybody but you, and you're willing to grind through it, just for the sake of being proud of yourself.
I think it's to be proud of myself, but I've always thought of sports as a platform, as a foundation for whatever else I'm going to do in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So then it's a
Yeah.
really good reminder. I'm in the midst of writing. There are a lot of each day that I start writing,
I bet writing's a dark time.
I think, okay, I'm ready to quit. I am
Yeah.
3 words in,
This sucks.
and I'm ready to quit. And maybe I'll be smarter later, because I am dumb as a box of
Well, and you
rocks
read the
right now,
work,
you know?
you don't like the material you wrote,
Yeah.
there's a lot of self-doubt or judgment per se when you're writing.
Yeah, there really is, but it's one of those just moving beyond it, and it's the it's the Mark Twain quote where he said, what is it? Eat a frog first thing in the morning. It's like makes the rest of the day a whole lot easier.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah.
You're like, all right,
That's
okay.
a good quote, actually.
Yeah, so you kind of look at your life and go, because I went through that yesterday. I'm trying to figure out how to bring some sponsors into my program, and some of the to fund some of the production costs and some of these things, and it was hard to hit send
I
on
bet.
these things, to go, okay, these guys are going to think I'm an idiot. Do I have all the answers? It's like, I don't have all the answers. And really, ultimately, I want to find a way to be able to support you guys and give you a benefit. I think that there are some raw elements here, most definitely, but at the same time, it's got to benefit you guys. So it took me a while, and it was one of those where you end up with like kind of having a miserable day because you keep waiting.
Yeah.
I don't know if you do this, but I keep waiting. It's not the big you. It was all me on that point. I kept procrastinating, and finally I was like, okay, this is it. I'm getting it out. And then I got great responses back, and you go, okay, but part of it is that sometimes you're not going to have great responses too, and it's
Yeah.
almost like you got to be prepared for that, to go, okay, what was there something different? That was back to the Learned Optimism was the name of that book.
Learned Optimism.
Learned Optimism was the name of that book, and this guy came up with this whole new theory, and he presented it. I think it was at Oxford. He presented it, and everybody's like, wow, like this is groundbreaking. This is all happening. And there was one guy who asked a question and just blew holes in his theory. And as the reader, I was reading this going, what a jerk. Like this guy, like what possessed this guy? Do you know how hard this guy worked
Yeah.
to get to this point? And the guy on the stage, he went and sought this guy out, and they ended up partnering.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
He wanted to make
The alternate mindset.
the alternate mindset, and he wanted to make his theory as strong as possible, and he needed the naysayer to help him make that theory.
See, that's a mind that is willing to, knows what it takes to grow, rather than getting all upset about it and kind of.
Yeah, and it is a scientific mindset, right? I mean, it's the way
Yeah.
that you have to do things, but as the reader, you're just like, oh man, really?
Yeah. Right.
Like, what are you doing? This guy worked so hard. He struggled. This is new. You're gonna beat him up.
This is his thing.
Yeah. So it's really interesting just how some of these things work.
Completely off subject. What was the transition like? Now, is it mono skiing? Is that what it's
Uh-huh.
called? Okay.
Yep, mono
I don't know why I always called it like chair skiing.
Chair skiing, I mean,
But,
you can call it that. Or, yeah.
What was the learning curve going from, like, because you understand, as a skier, clearly, you know your edges, you know what the skis are capable of.
Right.
What was the learning curve going into the mono ski?
The learning curve is I went back to things that I didn't remember doing. I went back to being a beginner, a complete beginner,
Oh,
to
wow.
not being able to be upright, to falling over, to
Just a lack of trust in the equipment and your ability and the.
well, even just I couldn't balance, so I didn't necessarily have those muscles to balance. It was something that was different enough it's kind of like it's kind of like anything different that we do. It's kind of like initially if you're like standing on like one of those Swiss balls or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And eventually you get to the point where you're lifting weights, where you're doing whatever and things like that. But that first time you're like, this is I can't imagine.
What's the most engaged part of your body? Is it like your obliques and your abs, or is it your shoulders and arms, or obviously a combination of all? But when you're really engaged in a turn, like what's taking the most force?
In the beginning, I don't really have the abs. So my injury is pretty much I have the abs like just below my sternum kind of thing. So it really is the lats are a big part of my balance, especially when you first start. Your arms are huge. You're using your arms to, not necessarily huge in a literal sense.
Yeah, but just balancing.
But yeah, they're just so important. You're using your arms. You're directing the ski in a lot of ways with the outriggers. As you get better and better, it gets to be a whole body kind of thing, and it's really funny because when I get tired, like if you get tired skiing, you're like, okay, my quads are beat. This is it. I'm done. For me, it's almost like my body kind of turns to jello. So it's like all this.
I can see it. Yeah.
I just can't really move anymore. And I describe the way I ski as a controlled fall. That I throw my upper body down the hill and I hope that my ski comes around and catches me, and picks me back up and I stay upright, in the middle of the turn. But it's a big part of the commitment, just to throwing my body down the hill, because that's how I create edge angle as much as anything.
And once you finally got the hang of understanding the ski and really working the ski, was it more of a joy than skiing before? Because you're lower to the ground, it feels faster. I mean, every day's a powder day.
Exactly.
When you're in a monoski.
Face shots for me are
for sure.
a whole lot easier. 4 inches of snow, I can get face shots. The feeling of making a turn is the same. So it really, it's where I forget that I'm sitting down, because you're
just
is
arcing
that
a turn.
feeling of making a turn, and you go, okay,
just let the energy of the ski take over.
It really is, and it's that sense of purity. It's like that whole idea of like continuing on that quest for the perfect turn, which is as elusive as a unicorn, right? I mean, it doesn't really exist.
For sure.
We keep coming back.
So did you just become completely obsessed once you started getting it and determined that you realized that you could start making a career out of this, and that's when you really got in the mindset of it's time to get serious with this? Or
yes, and funny enough though, I saw a woman named Diana Golden the year before my accident in a ski race, and so I saw the possibility, because she was really at the top of the world in terms of performance, but also in terms of really making it a business as well. And I saw that the year before my accident, that there really was a possibility in turning this into my profession and what I was going to do. And I felt an obligation in a lot of ways to make that work, to make it work for myself, but also for for all of for a whole lot of the other people in the world, just the other athletes, to try to set a standard that really that there was a value, that it was an exchange of value for value, as opposed to being a charity case.
So do you miss it? I mean, is there, or is the speaking, the writing, that's your next, mental kind of grind?
I miss it sometimes. Funny with skiing, I think I miss training more than I miss competing. Going out and just training and just the feeling of being engaged.
Having a routine. And
I miss that part of it. The lifestyle I really miss, when everything is geared toward your performance, when what you eat, when you sleep, all these things are geared toward your performance. I miss that part.
I think a lot of athletes, that's where they get lost, is because their whole life is planned out for them. You wake up, you got practice, you got stretching, you got therapy, and all of a sudden you wake up and you have nothing to do.
You can do whatever you want to do. It's like, whoa, I don't know if I'm ready for that.
That lackadaisical lifestyle, just when you've dedicated the last 20 years to a craft, is tough to kind of let go of.
Yeah, no, it really is. It really is. So yeah, I miss parts of it, but I think that's also part of progressing in our lives. I think part of the reason that I retired was that you keep learning the same stuff over and over again, and at some point you realize that you no longer physically have the ability to do it better.
Yep.
And
that's got to be a tough part to realize, when it's kind of a digression, like you're in the gym working as hard, but the results aren't, giving you what you think you should have.
And that's exactly it. And you think, okay, maybe now this is time to take this learning and move on to something else. And that's the hope. And it's been a great platform. It's been a great foundation. But at the same time, I feel like I'm learning stuff every day. And you know what? I'm learning stuff every day because I need to learn stuff every day.
That's a good place to be.
Yep.
So you got this new memoir coming out. When's
Yep.
it come? When are you releasing it?
I'm working on that. I've said August 1st that I'm going to start publishing the first chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to make sure I'm trying to put because I've got to get the video part of it as well, which means a little bit of travel and trying to figure out how I can shoot that as, you know, in the shorter period of time, shoot it, put it together, have that ready to go. And I also want to have a little bit of a head start as I do it so that I'm not publishing it 1 week and going, okay, I've got 2 weeks to make the next one work. I think that might be a bit of a challenge with the rest of my life.
So where can people find you? Where can they find this your
So they can find me at that'll be published on chriswaddellspeaking.com, and it's 2 D's, 2 L's, and Waddell. And then Instagram is the thing that I'm getting more and more into as I'm doing it. And, you know, it's one of those, it's kind of like, it's kind of cool and it's kind of a little bit scary at the same time. But that's Chris Waddell. So it's Chris_Waddell_living_it. So it's Chris Waddell it with underscores in between.
Got it.
So, yeah, which living it to me is kind of like, I feel like
You've been living it, man.
in the midst of it.
You
know?
could have taken your life a whole different trajectory, and you've really, like I said in the beginning, you're an inspiring dude. I mean, it's really, it's remarkable to see what you've done over the course of the last couple decades, and hats off to you, and I hope you keep doing it.
Cool. Thanks,
Thanks,
man.
Chris. I really enjoyed it.
Appreciate it. Thanks, David.
Chris Waddell, David Windsor, Beyond Great with David James. Thanks for watching. Till next time.